All right, I have a really good one for you guys in this video. I'm going to show you the easiest strategy that you can use with every single brand, and it always freaking works. So this strategy, we've been using it a lot over the years, and you might have seen different parts of it throughout many videos throughout this call because this strategy implores a lot of just sound fundamental marketing strategies. So for example, like scarcity, fear of missing out, also includes things like urgency, and that's why it works so well. So this strategy we have used on so many verticals to get to $100,000 a day in revenue. And it works not only during just Black Friday times. We've done this throughout the year during typically what other brands are struggling. We're actually using this strategy. And if you follow the advice in this video and you do this on a regular basis, which I'll teach you how to do it, it will completely change your store revenue. So this is the genius $100,000 a day Shopify framework that we've been using for quite a few number of years. And once you get this core foundation, you can then expand upon it. You can make it a little bit different. You can tweak it. I'll talk about some of the things that you can do to tweak it that we've tested over the years, and depending on your niche and your vertical, it may actually work out pretty well for you. So this strategy, it's designed to implore simplicity, and I'll teach you how to do that. But in my opinion, from what I've seen over doing this for 8 years, simplicity scales, simple scales. When you make things overly complex, in my opinion, things don't work as well. I've talked to all my other friends that have brands that have done $1,000 a day. I've talked to my other marketers or agency owners that work with brands do $100,000 a day. And every single time that they pull back the curtain, reveal the ad accounts, reveal the strategies, it's never complex. I've never yet to see a strategy that scaled like this, $100,000 a day, and it was complex. It's always very simple, but they're masters at those simple fundamentals. And so if you're watching this video and you're like, man, like I just haven't gotten there yet, I haven't done that yet, typically that means you haven't yet mastered these simple fundamentals, because it's a different from just being competent to being masters, right? I mean, Bruce Lee talks about it. He'd much rather practice a kick 10,000 times than practice 10,000 kicks one time. It's the mastery, it's the details that matter. So what is this? Well, before we dive into what it is, I want you guys to understand that this strategy, these methods, people have been talking about for years and years and years. So for example, if you know Dan Kennedy, he says, the more you create legitimate urgency that makes someone feel they have to act now, the more likely you are to close the sale. That is so important. Or have you probably heard of this guy? The principle of scarcity is one of the most powerful tools of influence. People are more motivated by the thought of losing something than gaining something. That's really important. So another person has called that the sunk cost theory, right? Where they'd much rather spend more effort and money to avoid losing money than they are to try to gain money. Okay. And the reason why we're talking about this is because these are strategies you need to be employing. Now, you shouldn't do this every single day, and I'll talk about this and I'll teach you how to do it, but you should do this strategically throughout the year, because I've said this before, variety is the spice of life when it comes to e-commerce, meaning you need to break things up. You need to do things throughout the year, but also it gives people a chance to kind of forget what you did previously in the year. And so you can do the same strategy over and over and over again. Or Gary Halbert says, you must focus on creating a starving crowd for your offer. Urgency and scarcity turn their hunger into action. Or Seth Godin, people do not buy goods and services, they buy relations, stories, and magic. Here's the important part. Scarcity and urgency amplify that magic, or amplify the magic. So if you are a brand, or if you're working for a brand, or if you're managing a brand and they already have a good product, you already have the ingredients you need to go parabolic. You already do. Now, you may have a certain business fundamentals or business economics you have to fill out and you have to address. And so if you need some understanding about that, watch a previous video that I just made, either one on our formula to do $300 million for brands, specifically around the one of like how we're running meta ads. But it's important here is like, if you already have a good product, you already have everything you need. Typically what's missing is either just the business economics, which I've talked about many times on this channel, or you aren't employing the right strategies. Now that could be creative, but specifically when it comes to this strategy. Or this is a really great saying, I like this one. Opportunities seem more valuable to us when their availability is limited. I'm pretty sure he wrote the book. What I want you to understand is that these principles have been around for decades. And there's a reason why some people take these principles and they can make $100 million businesses from it, and why other people just read it, but they don't actually comprehend or they don't have application. So hopefully my goal is that I will teach you these and you will have knowledge that you can then apply application. And there's many ways you can do it. I'm just going to show you some of the ways that we do it. But for example, if you don't know who this is, Dan Kennedy is just one of the godfathers when it comes to marketing strategy and copywriting. He says, the more you can create urgency that makes someone feel they have to act now, the more likely you are to close the sale. That is why, for example, countdown timers still work. That's why if you see this on Shopify stores, like when they have the number of quantity that's left over, because this stuff works. Or you have Robert Cialdini. So this guy is really awesome. He actually wrote the book Influence and Persuasion, really solid books if you haven't read those before. The principle of scarcity is one of the most powerful tools of influence. People are more motivated by the thought of losing something than gaining something. Or another way people call it is the sunk cost fallacy, where people just keep putting money in something because they're afraid of losing even though they've already lost the money. That's why a lot of people, when they play poker, they'll double down when they're already in the hole because they're afraid of losing all their money. It's just stupid. But this is important because when applied strategically, it creates leverage. And the reason why many people that are watching this video, if you're a brand, you work for a brand, or you're an agency working for a brand, or a freelancer, typically one of the reasons why that your brands you work on haven't gone parabolic yet and done $100,000 a day in sales has very little to do of you're missing out on something. Now, I've talked at length on this channel about business economics. That could be a significant unlock, and if you haven't watched that before, go check out my other video on the 300 million a year strategies that we employ to do this. And if you need more information just on the business economics, go check out my video on the secret formula for scaling D2C brands. That's a great video where I do an introduction on business economics. Or you can check out my other one, talks about the only meta ads masterclass you need. I also dive into business economics again. And the reason why is because that is important. But leveraging these principles I'm going to teach you, which is part of the genius of doing $100,000 a day on Shopify, is using these principles that these men have been talking about for decades. Gary Halbert says, you must focus on creating a starving crowd for your offer. Urgency and scarcity turn their hunger into action. And Seth Godin said, people do not buy goods and services, they buy relations, stories, and magic. Scarcity and urgency amplify the magic. So if you guys already have a good product, maybe your business economics are already pretty good, you already have magic. You're probably missing a story, which I should make a video on that. I think you guys will get a lot of entertainment value on how to craft really great stories when it comes to e-commerce. But specifically, a lot of you are missing amplification to go parabolic, okay? And then again, Robert Cialdini said, opportunities seem more valuable to us when their availability is limited. That's really important. And this is all inclusive into the strategy I'm going to teach you guys. Now, you've probably seen bits and pieces of this strategy potentially throughout the internet, but I'm going to show you how it can be condensed into a really great campaign. Now, these campaigns we've done for every vertical out there. So what I'm going to do is we're going to dive into the training, and throughout, I'm going to give you examples, okay? So first of all, what you need to make this go well, you need one really great offer. Now, this offer, I've talked about irresistible offers on this channel before. Actually, I'm going to do a video on how to make irresistible acquisition offers specifically to make go parabolic. But I want you to understand is if you have a really great product and a good offer, this works across all niches. We have done this strategy in travel and footwear and arts and CPG, giveaway brands, fashion brands, you name it, because it is a core marketing fundamental that always works. And that's why, I don't know about you guys, I would much rather focus on the 20% that delivers 80% of the results. And typically that is in mastery and the art of the fundamentals that all of these experts have been talking about and using for decades. You master those, you're freaking golden. So you need one really great offer, okay? And then it's important that it needs to have short-term availability. Now, I personally like having short-term availability. There's times to make it happen long-term, but this strategy specifically is made for short-term availability because, as we'll dive into in a second, as Robert Cialdini said, when their availability is limited, that's when you create significant opportunities, okay? So you have one good offer, short-term availability, and this important part, publish the end date or publish when it's going to end. So if you have a good offer, and again, this works for every freaking niche, have a specific time frame it's going to be available. That's important because what's going to happen is you'll see some of the results, and you saw some of the results already up here. What's important is that you want to have an end date because your sales are going to ramp up. That's why all of these have a significant hockey stick environment, is because we have a short-term availability, which makes people just want to have to get it. Because remember, what did some of these people say? Urgency and scarcity turn their hunger into action. And then we publish it. So you have to put it on the website, publish it, on the bar at the top of your website, put it on your product pages, on your landing pages, tell them when it's going to end. And when you do that, you will start to have $100,000 days. Now, most brands don't maintain $100,000 days year round, unless you are like a 9-figure brand, because if you do $100,000 days year round, you would be an 8-figure brand, even a 9-figure brand. But what we do, and I'll show you the calendar in a second, is we plan these strategically throughout the year. Black Friday is one of them, but we do it other times throughout the year because what it does is it gives us insane volume, not only in sales, but of new customer acquisition. Because I've talked about this this channel many times, is the lifeblood of your brand is new customer acquisition. You are in the game of acquiring the most amount of customers, because if you acquire more than your competitor, you win. That's like playing the game of life. In the game of life, you remember as kids, if you have a good job, if you have a good car, you have a good house, and you have kids, like you win the game of life. When it comes to e-commerce, whoever acquires the most customers wins the game of life. Okay. So here's what we do. Now we're gonna get quite tactical. How do we execute this like in the ad account and in the strategy? All right. So number one is what we do is we have batches. So we have message batches. Think of these messaging as going back to those famous copywriters I listed above, is we have specific times throughout the sale that we communicate the offer differently, because what it does is it builds momentum. It builds the urgency, because remember what they said, that urgency and scarcity creates the hunger for action. And so we'll do that. We have specific messaging that we release throughout the lifetime of this offer that introduces it. So you get some sales and you can get some traction. Sometimes you can get a ton of traction, but then as time goes on, we add urgency, we add more urgency, and then we add extreme urgency. Okay. Now, for example, here's what this looks like. So this is actually using a couple of different brands, and I'm going to use a really great example of this is the giveaway brand model. I think they have a really good example of this. So it looks like this. So let's say we have an offer for 1 month. Okay. The offer's for 1 month. Here's what we do. Well, we introduce the offer, add some urgency, and the urgency can be win these things before somebody else. It could be just publishing the date. Then we add some more urgency, and the urgency can be in the way of, in this particular brand, extra multipliers. And then as things get closer to the end, you talk about the final week, final 2 days, and then final hours. That's just one way of communicating that urgency. But what this does is it makes people who got into the funnel, and these are ads, by the way, you should do this for other channels, which I'll get into in a second, is Meta will serve these ads to those people even if they didn't buy. So if they didn't buy throughout this period, as it gets closer, as you communicate to them across all your channels, it builds momentum and it builds the hunger. That's what we're trying to do. Build the hunger, because we want to do $100,000 sales volume days. And many of our brands, once they get about halfway through the offer, that's when we start ripping, where we start doing $100,000 days for days on end, or even for weeks on end. So we had a couple brands even this year that they're doing $100,000 days, 7 days in a row, and they end up doing $1.5 million in like 13 days. It was absolutely nuts, using strategies like this. So what you want to do is when you're doing a strategy like this, you want to make sure that you're doing this across all your channels. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. These are ads, okay? These are examples of ads. But what you want to do is you want to do this in your ads, in your email, your organic, your site, any channel medium that you use to market and communicate with your customers. You want to do it across all. So when you are adding the introduction, when you introduce the offer, do it on everything. And then as you add urgency, do it on everything. And then so on and so forth, all the way to extreme urgency. As it gets closer, add it on everything. We have a brand inside of our D2C dojo where she did this and she had her best sales month ever. And it wasn't even during Black Friday. But a big thing that she was forgetting was to do it across all marketing channels. She was doing it on ads and email, but she wasn't doing it organically. She wasn't doing it on the website. And that's really important, because people, when they see the ad, they're going to go look at your Instagram profile or TikTok profile. You want to make sure you add it everywhere so that people see it everywhere. Okay. So what we'll do is we try to plan these events once per quarter. Imagine, if you will, with me. Imagine, let's say you're like a 3 million to 5 million in your brand, right? So that's meaning you're doing like $300,000 to $400,000 a month. And you had these big events where you plan these events. And could you imagine if every single quarter you had several days where you end up doing $100,000 in sale, but you strategically plan that 4 times a year, Black Friday probably being the biggest one? That would be massive for your brand. And each one of those events become really big customer acquisition moments, because this is where things are important. I'm really big into data. I'm really big into like customer cohorts. Every time that we pull a customer cohort from a brand at the end of the year, we look at what months or quarters had the biggest percentage of people coming back. Now, Black Friday is that big event that has a significant multiplier on people that buy at the beginning of the year. A massive percentage of them repeat buy again in Q4. That is why Q4 is such a critical time for brands, not only profitability, but also lifetime value. But when we look at the brands who have done this, big events like this, those people that bought during that time have a massive percentage of people that end up buying again in Black Friday, because Black Friday is like the biggest time for every single e-commerce brand. Now, even though we do this across all marketing channels, I just want to walk you through how can you execute this inside of an ad account. There's different nuances. I'm just going to show you a way to get started. So here's what you want to do. So if you're going to execute this in the ad account, it's important to understand, what do you want? So you have CBO, you have ASC campaigns. I'm just going to put CBO and ASC kind of into one bucket. And then you have ABO, which is like ad set budget optimization. Now, when you're doing big run-ups like this, we've tried everything from CBO, ASC. Right now, what we're doing for big run-ups like this, depending on the brand and depending on how aggressive, how much money, typically the more money we're having to spend on a big event like this. For example, we have a couple brands where they're spending like $100,000 a week, and a couple brands are spending like $400,000 a week in these big offer event time periods. We'll actually do ABO because we want the most amount of control, and I'll show you in a second. It gives us the most amount of control to force budget in those ad sets to communicate the differences and what we're trying to communicate in the ads, for example. So it'll look like this. So let's say, for example, we have an ABO campaign. This is the offer. We would have batch 1 as one ad set. These are ad sets, by the way. That's the campaign. Batch 2 as a second ad set, batch 3, and batch 4. So it's launch, ad urgency, more urgency, extreme urgency. And as a representation, we'll change the budget. So batch 1, because typically it runs the longest, has one budget. Now we are looking at real ROAS, which I'll show you guys in a second. But typically as the batches go on, the time frame they are live gets less and less and less, but the budget gets more and more and more. Now, why is that? Because we're creating hunger. And as you saw from some of the marketing OGs and copywriting OGs at the beginning of this video, up above this, is that the more hunger and urgency you add to it, the more it adds to people's fuel to want to buy that product. That's why, to kind of bring a full back circle, that's why we add end date that it's happening. That is why we also talk about it's only live for this time period, because it adds the urgency that they have to act. And that's why the closer it gets, typically your conversion rate gets better, but also that's why we spend more money, because as the conversion rate gets better and as more people jump on the offer, we can spend more money and be more aggressive and acquire more customers. Now, when you do this, it's very simple in the ad account. I mean, guys, there's not rocket science because we're focusing on the simplicity, which is marketing psychology. It is very simple, just ad sets, all broad. As you can see here, the CPAs are freaking fantastic. And as the batches go on, we're spending more money, okay? And the time frames they are live go down. For example, we have some campaigns depending how much they're trying to spend, where we're spending $700,000 in a day to just try to force the budget because the conversion rate is so good. And then kind of wrap it off, how we make decisions is we are looking at real ROAS. We're looking at how much do we spend on this offer, okay? How much contribution profit is that offer generating for us? And that's how we make directional scale decisions. But if you want to know like specifics on how do we do that, go back and watch that video, which I mentioned already, my secret formula to scaling brands with millions. Or actually another good one would actually be the Meta Ads Masterclass. Go back and watch that one. I get into business economics on both of those and our strategies about this. So that is the genius $100,000 a day sales strategy we do for Shopify brands. It's so funny. Every time I teach this to someone inside of the D2C dojo, they tell me like, it can't be that simple. Guys, it really is that simple. It's because you have to execute it, right? There's a lot of moving parts. When you get into this, that means, for a particular offer, for a month, at a minimum, you have 4 different types of communication they have to do. Like for ads, you have 4 different batches. In each batch, you have to have several creatives, right? So that right there, you're looking at maybe 16 and 20 creatives, and that's on the ad side. Then you have the email side, the organic side. It is that simple. And so a lot of times, this is the big reason why brands can't hit that $100,000 a day. It's either because of inventory, which this won't fix your inventory issues or your capital issues. This will give you cash flow and it'll give you money, but you have to build up to if you don't have the inventory or you don't have, for example, like the ability to spend that much amount of money in a single day. But guys, this is the strategy. That is what we do to do $100,000 a day for a lot of our brands. We're going to be planned out strategically every single quarter. If you're unsure if you're ready to do this, again, go back and watch one of those other 2 videos I talked about, the Meta Ads Masterclass, because I get into business economics on that one and how you can do this kind of stuff and make these kind of decisions. Or if you just want to dive deeper into some of the strategies, my secret formula for scaling D2C brands video, that's a really solid one. Or if you want to see just a sneak peek at some case studies, I have many videos on this channel where I show real results of real brands of how we're doing this for them. Oh, and by the way, if you want more strategies like this, you should consider joining our D2C dojo. It is a mentorship group for e-commerce brands. We have 47 founders inside that group. And why I like it so much is you get to see what they're doing. We have weekly group calls. We invite other 7 and 8 figure brand owners to come in and to speak and to show their backends, show their ad accounts, show what's working for them. And you get to steal that for yourself. Plus you get access to all of the marketing SOPs that my team personally uses to do this for brands like that. Consider joining it, fill out an application because you get to have a one-on-one mentoring calls with me personally. That's it. If you have any questions, put it in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.